On 2016, in the middle of the day, a fourth grader saw something moving disgustingly on a concrete cylinder in a park. She came to investigate and asked, "Who is hiding there?" To her surprise, a pink, dumb-looking creature emerged and told her it was starving. The creature wasn't from this planet. He was a Happian from planet Happy, on a quest to spread happiness throughout the universe. He had recently landed on Earth with his Happy spaceship, and during his first contact with humanity, humans thought he was some kind of animal and tried to capture him. He narrowly escaped. Terrified and hungry, the only one who helped him was Shizuka, the child who fed him bread. The creature's name was Nuanekf, but since Shizuka struggled to pronounce his name, she named him Takopi because he looked like an octopus. Takopi examined his savior, thinking of ways to repay her kindness, and decided to let her use his happy gadgets. He showed her one called the Flappy Wings that lets you soar to the sky, but Shizuka refused, saying she needed to buy a writing board and what she did was no big deal. She added that even if she could fly, nothing would change. As Shizuka walked away with her vandalized and beaten school bag, Takopi, due to his naivete, misinterpreted her response. Since he had seen earthling birds fly, he assumed Shizuka, being an earthling, could also fly, which was unknowingly racist. The next day, Shizuka and Takopi were hiding from a group of girls, who appeared to be Shizuka's classmates. They were happily talking about how they had broken Shizuka's writing board for the third time that week. Takopi, oblivious to what they were discussing, only noticed that they seemed happy. As the girls left, Takopi showcased another happy gadget to Shizuka, this time a camera. It functioned like a regular camera but had a special function. Before Takopi could explain this function, Shizuka interrupted, saying she had to go buy another writing board before the stationery store closed. Takopi was confused about why she needed to buy another one, but Shizuka simply said it had gone missing. As he watched her walk away, Takopi developed an admiration for Shizuka's industriousness and promised himself he would make her happy. As days went by, Takopi showcased multiple happy gadgets in attempts to make Shizuka happy. This time he showed her a ballpoint pen that sounded like a rabbit from Saturn. Shizuka told him she had to go home to feed Chappie, which made Takopi curious. She invited him to her home, a traditional Japanese house where Chappie, her pet dog, happily greeted them. Initially threatened by Chappie's size, Takopi soon relaxed as he watched Shizuka smile while playing with her dog. The first time he had seen her smile. While Takopi was admiring this scene, he missed a dangerous glint in Chappie's eyes. When Shizuka brought Chappie's food, the dog pounced on Takopi until Shizuka quickly stopped him. During the house tour, Shizuka mentioned she was home alone because her mother was out escorting. When Takopi asked what escorting meant, Shizuka explained that her mother accompanies clients for work. As Takopi pondered this, he asked about Shizuka's father. After a brief pause, Shizuka answered that she didn't have a father, which Takopi misinterpreted, thinking humans could reproduce with just mothers. Shizuka then explained that her father had left Chappie when Chappie was just a puppy with her, and they had been together ever since. She loved Chappie so much that no matter how terrible her life was, she was okay as long as she had Chappie. As Takopi observed their bond, he felt an unfamiliar emotion he couldn't identify, ultimately concluding Shizuka did have a father and humans couldn't reproduce by themselves. Hours passed by. Outside, the night sky was bright with stars. As they walked toward the park, Shizuka asked Takopi which star was Planet Happy. He responded that it was too far away to be seen. Takopi described the delicacies from his planet and suggested Shizuka should visit his world via his happy spaceship, but she declined, saying she didn't believe in magic. As Takopi explained that it wasn't magic but happy gadget, Shizuka's expression darkened and she said she couldn't go anywhere, not even to where her father was. Takopi remembered his mother's words, "My dearest offspring, take these happy gadgets with you. Travel far and wide to spread happiness throughout the universe. But be careful, you must never break our commandments." Takopi wasn't worried about the commandments since he couldn't convince Shizuka to use his happy gadgets anyway. He promised that someday he would take Shizuka to his planet and make her smile ear to ear. though not right now since something had happened and he couldn't return. Shizuka sat down and smelled Tokopi, who turned red. She told him he didn't smell like anything, then stood up and said goodbye because it was late, promising to see him tomorrow. When Tokopi was about to show a new happy gadget, he found Shizuka with a grim expression, covered in bruises and holding Chappie's collar. When asked what happened, she said she had gotten into a fight with her friend. Tokopi thought her bruises were normal because he believed humans changed color during fights, just as he turned red when blushing. He showed her what he thought was a perfect gadget for her distress, the reconciliation ribbon. If people tied their pinky fingers together with it, they would reconcile and become friends again. The ribbon was strong, flexible, and could stretch infinitely. Shizuka became fixated on the ribbon and asked to borrow it. Though Tokopi remembered his mother's warning, a happy gadget must always be used in the presence of a happy-in. Never entrust a gadget to an alien being. He let her borrow it anyway, happy that she finally wanted to use a happy gadget. Hours later, growing worried, Tokopi went to Shizuka's home. Tokopi, thinking Shizuka might have accidentally tangled herself in the infinitely extending ribbon, hurried to her home to help untangle her. As he gently entered her room, his optimistic thoughts shattered at the sight before him. Shizuka's lifeless form hung from the beam above, the reconciliation ribbon wrapped around her neck. Tokopi asked what she was doing, but received no response. He said that the ribbon wouldn't work if tied to the beam. As he jumped to the box and tried to get Shizuka down, her body fell lifelessly to the ground. While Tokopi panicked over why Shizuka wasn't breathing, he realized the ribbon meant for reconciliation was wrapped around her neck. He blamed himself, thinking that if he hadn't disobeyed the commandment, this wouldn't have happened. All he could do was apologize as he caressed Shizuka. Throughout the vast expanse of the universe, death is equally ordained. Nothing exists to undo it, and no gadgets can bring the dead back to life. However, as Tokopi cried on the park, he remembered the picture they had taken. His camera had a special function. It was a time camera. Only one photo could be saved at a time, and if you fed the photo back into the camera, you could return to the moment the picture was taken. As he fed the photo into the camera, he wondered why humans, one of the most highly sentient life forms, could commit such acts, and why Shizuka had done this. He promised himself he would understand Shizuka better and create a future where she was alive and smiling. When Tokopi returned to the moment the picture was taken, Shizuka asked him why he was just standing still while holding the camera. The camera had worked. As Tokopi looked at the picture, thinking about the dark future that lay ahead for Shizuka, she grew worried about his behavior. He reassured her that nothing was wrong, and as she started to walk away, Tokopi asked to go to her school to know her better. The class started, and the teacher greeted the students. They could see how Shizuka was being treated. Her trashed bag and vandalized table were clearly visible, yet the teacher ignored it all. As Tokopi examined the classroom where Shizuka studied, a girl approached them, greeted Shizuka, and called her a parasite. The girl's name was Marina, and she seemed to be one of the girls they had been hiding from earlier. As Marina came closer to Shizuka and said she stank like her dog, it appeared she couldn't see Tokopi sitting on Shizuka's shoulder. They had discussed this earlier on how they will hide Tokopi and solved it with one of Tokopi's gadgets. A flower pin that made its wearer appear as a happy flower to others. When Marina stared intently at Shizuka, they feared being caught, but she only asked why Shizuka was wearing a chameleon flower in her hair. Shizuka then placed Tokopi in a flower pot. During math class, Shizuka stood embarrassed, unable to answer the homework question because Marina had hidden her notes. The disappointed teacher called on another classmate to answer. Watching from the flower pot, Tokopi thought Shizuka had ended her life because she couldn't answer her homework. So he used the time camera again to go back and tell her the answer. When Shizuka answered correctly, leaving the whole class shocked, the teacher called on Marina for the next problem. Marina, still stunned, fumbled her words, and the teacher called another student. Marina, embarrassed, glared at Shizuka. At recess, Marina and her gang brought Shizuka a full meal even though she had just eaten, guilt-tripping her to finish it. Takopi, seeing this, thought Shizuka must have felt so bad about leaving food on her plate that she had ended her life. He went to her table and consumed all the food, even the corn cob. As the day continued, all of Marina's relentless bullying was thwarted by Takopi, and the day ended with Marina defeated. Takopi, still oblivious to what was happening, concluded that what occurred today was fighting. He knew that when Happians fight, they simply take the other Happian's happy card to draw attention so they can discuss the problem and make up. Takopi thought Marina was hiding Shizuka's things and observing her closely because she wanted to make up with her. The next day, one of Marina's followers told Shizuka that Marina wanted to meet her during lunch recess by the PE storeroom. Takopi's eyes sparkled, thinking this was their chance to make up, but as he happily discussed how they talk things out, Shizuka, with tears in her eyes, told him he could only act that way because he had never talked with Marina before. Takopi then realized the seriousness of the situation. It was like eating someone's happy custard without permission, but he was determined to help them reconcile. Takopi suggested taking Shizuka's place using his happy gadget, the morphing palette. If a piece of someone's DNA was placed in it and the switch pressed, the user would morph into that person's form. Takopi told Shizuka to stay in the bathroom stall while he talked to Marina. When Marina questioned Shizuka's change in accent, Takopi thought the conversation was going smoothly until Marina slapped him and told him to stop using that accent. Shocked by his first experience of violence, Takopi apologized, still using the same accent, only to be slapped again. Marina scolded him for being creepy, and Takopi, sitting on the ground, apologized again. As Marina ranted about Shizuka acting cocky and being a know-it-all, Takopi, who had never experienced such harsh treatment on his happy planet, couldn't stand up as tears welled in his eyes. Marina kicked him in the face. When Takopi tried to respond to Marina's questions, she kicked him in the throat. As she walked closer, scolding him for speaking to her casually, Marina ground her foot into Takopi's stomach. Despite the pain and his desire to run away, Takopi remembered Shizuka. He quickly stood up, pleading with Marina to explain why she was doing this so he could understand. Before he could finish, Marina pulled his hair and called him trash, demanding to know how a daughter of a parasite who feeds off men dared to act superior. As Marina drew out a pen and ordered him to give her father back, Takopi quickly used his camera to go back in time. Tearful from the events of the previous loop, Takopi continued the day reflecting on Marina's actions while helping Shizuka. As days passed, he began to realize that his assistance to Shizuka was what angered Marina. Takopi blamed himself, thinking his actions were the reason for Shizuka's mistreatment. When the meeting between Shizuka and Marina was about to happen again, Takopi found himself frozen, still traumatized by the previous loop. Though afraid, he still wanted to help. He took out the morphing palette and transformed into Shizuka, then ran calling for help to come to the PE storeroom. Their classmate Naoki responded to the call. He offered to bring this up at the next student council meeting or tell a teacher. But Shizuka declined. Though they said their goodbyes, Naoki remained worried. Later at the park, while Shizuka and Takopi discussed the boy from earlier, Takopi is about to apologize, but Shizuka interrupted to ask if he had saved her earlier. She thanked him, noting she only got bruises on her face this time, and expressed gratitude for everything he had done today. Takopi felt remorse, believing his actions had led to her being beaten up. Shizuka then revealed that Marina had been this way ever since Marina's dad and her mom had gotten close. Nothing was fun anymore, and everything was terrible. But thanks to Takopi, things had gotten a little better. As Takopi teared up and apologized, leaving Shizuka confused, he silently promised himself he would keep helping her so she could live. In the distance, Marina glared at Shizuka like a frustrated predator that had missed its prey. Walking home, she reflected on why her bullying wasn't working on Shizuka, and why she had changed. Upon entering her home, she was greeted by a messy house that looked like a battleground, a depressed mother, and news that her father was having dinner again with Shizuka's mother. When Marina's mother asked if she was on her side and would do everything she asked, Marina comforted her. The night ended with Marina wearing a dangerous glint in her eyes, while Shizuka, Chappie, and Takopi slept peacefully. Day 6 arrived and continued as usual, but something was off. Marina's usual bullying and snarky remarks had stopped. Later, Shizuka and Takopi discussed this while walking Chappie towards the park, but Takopi reassured Shizuka that this was Marina taking the first step toward reconciliation. As they continued, Shizuka began reminiscing about how she and her dad used to walk together to the park when she was little. Takopi was shocked to learn she had a father, realizing mothers couldn't self-replicate. Shizuka explained that her father had left them when she was little, and on the night he left, the stars were out just like tonight. She had wished so hard to the stars that her parents wouldn't get divorced, but her wish didn't come true. That's why she didn't believe in magic or God. Takopi felt happy that Shizuka was comfortable sharing these things with him, compared to the last time they looked at the stars together. Then something occurred to him. In the previous timeline, it was day 6 after meeting Shizuka, just like today, and tomorrow she had died. Shizuka had come to the park with only Chappie's collar in her hand. Takopi wondered why that evening Chappie hadn't been with her, as a mysterious person approached them. It was Marina. She mocked Shizuka, saying she was just like her mother, getting busy at night. Chappie, being a friendly dog, went to Marina wagging his tail. Marina called him filthy and demanded to know what gave a parasite and a fox the right to have a pet dog. Shizuka, panicking, quickly called Chappie to her side to put on his leash, but Marina slapped her, leaving Chappie shocked and anxious. Marina continued hitting Shizuka while asking what gave her the right to have a dog. Chappie, growing increasingly anxious and angry at seeing his best friend hurt, finally lunged at Marina to protect Shizuka. Marina smirked as if everything was going according to plan. She shrieked and called for help, telling everyone that this vicious dog had attacked her. Bystanders called animal control, who subdued Chappie and took him away. Takopi remained stunned while Shizuka wept and called for Chappie. Unable to bear Shizuka's tears, Takopi took out his camera to go back in time. In the next attempt, Takopi suggested taking a different path. But Marina was there too, seemingly looking for them. Takopi gave up on this loop and used the camera again. On the third loop, he suggested a morning walk, but Marina was still there, waiting and waving. On the 10th loop, Takopi suggested not going for a walk that night and waiting until tomorrow, but it failed. 15 loops had passed, but no matter what Takopi did, Marina was always there. That's when he overheard that Marina was purposely tracking them. It had been her plan all along to get Chappie taken away, though Takopi still didn't understand this. As he was about to ask Shizuka, he saw her eyes and knew that if he didn't do something, she would be dead. Takopi called her name and promised that even though he had failed this time, he would keep trying again and again to find a way to ensure she would never be sad again. He reassured her to trust him, promising that this time he would surely make her smile ear to ear. After 101 loops, Takopi still couldn't prevent Chappie from being taken away. Shizuka sat depressed on a bench at animal control. Her mother was there, explaining that Chappie would have to live at his daddy's place because a dog that had bitten someone couldn't remain within city limits, though she assured Shizuka she could get him back one day. She mentioned that while Marina wasn't seriously injured, her mother was furious, putting her in a bind since Marina was one of her client's daughters. Before leaving in a taxi, she told Shizuka to come home and eat whatever she wanted for dinner, and asked why Shizuka was wearing a chameleon flower in her hair. As they walked home, Takopi questioned why he couldn't prevent Chappie from being taken away. But as long as Shizuka was alive, he wouldn't give up helping her bring Chappie back from her father's place. Though Takopi tried reassuring Shizuka, asking about her father's place and attempting to feed her, she ignored everything. Thinking she might be happier at school with her classmates, Takopi suggested that plan, but it backfired as everyone gossiped about her. Marina had told everyone that Shizuka had ordered her dog to attack her. Only Naoki showed concern. Marina approached Shizuka with her usual snark, questioning why she even came to school after what happened. Throughout recess, everyone bullied Shizuka, with Marina demanding an apology until Naoki intervened, announcing that the next class was starting. After everyone left, Naoki asked Shizuka if she was okay and offered help, but she ignored him. When class ended, Marina saw Shizuka walking alone and told her friends to go home without her. As Takopi continued trying to cheer up Shizuka without success, Marina confronted them, saying she wanted to talk about the dog. Shizuka, with lifeless eyes, went along with Marina. Takopi, still oblivious to the situation, believed they would chat nicely and reconcile. Having learned nothing from previous events, he followed them to a hidden forest, hoping to help them make peace. While walking through the path to a hidden forest, Marina remembered her parents arguing at the dinner table, leaving her mother crying. She convinced herself this was what she had to do to restore her family. As they walked, Shizuka broke down crying, calling Chappie's name, and Marina responded by throwing her bag at Shizuka's face. Marina began beating Shizuka, while telling her the dog was dead, but Shizuka clung to hope that her dog was alive and with her father. Marina called her stupid, insisted the dog was definitely dead, called her fatherless, called her mother a female dog, and told her nobody cared about her and she should die. Shizuka broke down crying while Takopi watched from a distance, too scared to move. Marina's verbal assault continued as she called Shizuka a parasite while stomping on her. She raged about how Shizuka's family money came from her daddy's wallet, how all her clothes and food were bought with money her mother had extracted from Marina's father, money he had worked hard to earn. Shizuka remained on the ground, sobbing and calling out Chappie's name while writhing in pain. Marina, still blaming Shizuka for her father's infidelity, ground her heel into Shizuka's head. Takopi, watching it all happen, finally found the courage to help Shizuka. He remembered how terrible Shizuka's life was, and that her only moments of happiness were with her dog. He realized that if he stayed hidden and didn't interfere, the end result would always be the same. Finally motivated, Takopi emerged from his hiding spot and lunged at Marina with his camera. Takopi and Shizuka stood looking at Marina's lifeless body. She was bleeding from her head as if struck with a brick. Takopi, shocked by his actions, began checking why she wasn't moving. He felt something was wrong. He had never killed or even caused pain to others before. Realizing this was wrong, he tried to use his camera for a redo, but it wouldn't work. Panicking, he repeatedly pressed the camera's button, but it remained broken from when he had used it to strike Marina's head. Shizuka approached and asked if Marina was dead. There wasn't even a twitch from Marina's body. As Takopi asked in denial what he was going to do now, Shizuka expressed admiration for what he had done. She repeated how she hadn't believed in magic for the longest time and had always thought things would be better if Marina were gone, but couldn't do anything herself. This wish that she never thought would come true had finally been granted through Takopi. Using Takopi's camera on Marina's cranium was like magic, she said. Though Takopi still didn't understand what was happening, he accepted Shizuka's words. Shizuka then said Chappie was definitely alive and they should go to her father's place. Looking at Marina's body, Takopi still couldn't believe this was a success, but his unease subsided when he saw Shizuka smiling ear to ear, thanking him for taking Marina's life. Earth, the third planet in this solar system. It was day 7 after Takopi arrived to Earth from planet Happy. Takopi and Shizuka held hands as they exited the forest, walking towards the start of their story with no do-overs.